We're very happy to have with us here today Robin Below. She's the Executive Director of the Illinois Lawyers Assistance Program. That provides confidential and no-cost substance abuse and mental health services to everybody in the legal profession, judges, lawyers, law students. Under her tenure, LAP has seen a 43% increase in funding provided by the Supreme Court, a 33% increase in clients served, and you're probably thinking we should be serving more than that because there's more that need the help, and a 300% increase in fundraising. Prior to her role as executive director, Robin was LAP's clinical director, and in that capacity, she supervised the clinical services provided to members of the Illinois legal community. She began her career as a licensed clinical professional counselor at Advocate Medical Group, working with adolescents and families, earned a master's degree in counseling from Northern Illinois University, practiced law for 8 years as a senior assistant public defender in DuPage, Kane County State's attorney, but always had a concentration and involvement in family law. And she's also a founding, you have to tell us what this is, the founding member of the Elmhurst chapter of the Action for a Better Tomorrow. Robin Below. Am I saying your name right?
Bello.
Bello.
Bello. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? Okay, good. It's now called the Progressives for Change, so that kind of gives you an idea of what it is. Thank you. Yeah, and I think we're now sufficiently depressed after hearing about the property tax. So this will advance? Okay. Nope.
The other way.
The other way.
The one you can't see.
The one I
It's all
can't
worn
see.
off.
Got it. Okay. And this is the most interesting podium up here. There's like tons of duct tape, so I have way too many things I'm trying to balance up here.
It's a low budget effort.
Okay. So if I have to get my drink or whatever.
Here.
No, I have one
Oh,
down
yeah.
here, yes. And I'm going to apologize ahead of time. I actually have bronchitis, so if I go into a coughing attack, just give me a moment and we'll move on. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Especially, too, so I don't spill it.
There you go.
Okay. So how many people have heard about LAP before? Yeah, I see John O'Brien up there. That's actually the most for any audience I've ever been in front of. One of our biggest challenges is still outreach. We are on target to help about 450 clients this year. And when we first started many years ago, there was about 60. So we're doing very well, but considering the ARDC statistics say that there's about 98,000 registered lawyers, and that doesn't include law students or judges, we are falling woefully short. So the purpose today is to talk about recognizing, understanding, and referring clients to the Lawyers Assistance Program. Most likely, you yourself will never need these services, but unfortunately, at some point in your career, and you may have already come across them, you're going to find someone who's going to need them. So who we are quickly, we are a not-for-profit. We operate under the auspices of the Illinois Supreme Court. One of the couple takeaways I want you guys to walk away here today remembering is we are 100% confidential. And what that means is if you call in with a referral, I can never ever share your name, that you were the one that called in with regards to that person. And two, if you yourself are a client, we cannot share that information with anyone without your permission. Sometimes an employer will ask you to come, or perhaps, unfortunately, the ARDC will be involved in your life. And so they will want proof that you are coming, and if you give that okay, we will then share that information with them and advocate clinically on your behalf. We are made up of trained volunteers, clinicians. Our volunteers include both lawyers, judges, and law students. So what we do is we support the Illinois legal community in terms of addiction and mental health issues. One of the things that I often hear about when someone does know about LAP is that we're the alcohol police. We are not the alcohol police. First of all, we are not necessarily against drinking alcohol. We always say do it in moderation, and I know you guys are having a nice party afterwards too. So, but yes, we are not the alcohol police. But if you do have an addiction issue, we will help you with it. But also one of the things that we do assist with is mental health. And mental health is kind of there's no better term than to use the word mental health. But when I use the word mental health, I think most people go to like bipolar or clinical depression or schizophrenia or something very serious. These can be very low issues such as like anxiety or grief, loss of a loved one, going through a divorce. some kind of low-level depression. So that's what we do. And so we conduct assessments, we provide referrals, we offer facilitated support groups a couple times a week, we also conduct interventions, and we obviously provide educational services as well. Okay, so it's the arrow with no arrow on it. Okay.
There you go.
Oh, this is hard to read. I'm glad I brought notes because I can't see it. Okay, so except my notes are too small. So how clients get to LAP. The biggest bar that you're seeing is the self-referral. And this has very much changed over the years, which is great. And I think, and I'm going the wrong way. Oh, goodness. I'm sorry. Holy cow. Can you help me? What did I just do?
Which way
Oh, there I am. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm back. I'm not touching this now. Is self-referral. And I think one of the reasons for that is that the idea or the stigma associated with drug and alcohol issues and mental health issues is decreasing. Because back in the day when we first started, it was all via interventions. And so that is great. On the last bar, you see the ARDC and character and fitness. Just to clarify that, we get referrals from the ARDC, but we never refer back. So it's a one-way street. When people are showing up at the ARDC and showing some signs of impairment, they are now sending the clients over to us. And that was something the Supreme Court, when we met with them this past spring, really wanted to see those numbers go up, because the ARDC was reporting that 34% of their cases, the person was seeing, or the respondent was showing some signs of impairment, and we were only seeing 3 to 4% of referrals. So we really wanted to increase that number to try and get people the help that we need. The gender distribution, 66% to 34%. My clinical director is not a lawyer. He's one of the few in the office that is not a lawyer. And he was really concerned about this. He's like, I want to get that female number up. I don't understand what's going on. And then when we actually looked at the ARDC statistics, fortunately or unfortunately, this is how actually the lawyer population breaks out. We still only have about 34% females in the industry. So we're doing okay, at least at LAP. Age range of clients. This slide is really important because it used to be that the area 50 to 59 was our highest percentage of clients that we were seeing. And I think that, that makes sense to me because, at that point in your career, you're kind of becoming stagnant, you're kind of hitting midlife crisis. You're wondering, is this what I want to be doing, through retirement? You're kind of burned out, that type of thing. But the most interesting thing has been happening the past couple of years. It's the under 30 crowd that is showing the most signs of impairment. So age is a predictor of impairment now. And why do you guys think that is? Why are we seeing so much impairment in the under 30? They just entered the profession. How can they be burned out already?
One reason might be that they're all trying to figure out how to pay off their student debt and their debt from law school, and they're all stressed.
Yes, absolutely. Any other reasons? There are not jobs. Yeah, there are not jobs. The other interesting thing is that even though people are getting jobs, and especially in these big law firms, you would think that those associates are coming to us talking about how overworked they are. They're working 50, 60 hours a week. They're just not used to this. They can't handle it. It's actually the opposite. They're underworked, and they realize that they just got hired to fulfill those numbers, so the law firm can then say, hey, we hired this many associates, and within a year or two, they're being let go. So they're not getting the work necessary to meet those billable hours. Okay, so let's see, issues. So this is a breakdown, just to give you guys, again, an idea of, yes, we deal with substances, but look at that anxiety, stress, depression, pie, the red and the yellow. We deal with a lot of mental health issues. Being a lawyer these days, and it always has been, it's been very stressful, anxiety, producing, which can lead to depression if untreated. And unfortunately, stress is really seen as a badge of honor in the legal profession. I always give the example, I used to work at the DuPage County Courthouse, and I worked at the end of the hallway, so I kind of had to walk the gauntlet. And I'd always see attorneys who were very well dressed, just kind of moseying their way down to court, and they had like their nice, very expensive briefcase and kind of walking down. And then you'd see the lawyer who was kind of looking disheveled. They had just, papers just falling out of their briefcase, and they're kind of, going from courtroom to courtroom to courtroom. And any layperson, if you ask them, and said, what kind of attorney would you want to be? They would say, I want to be, the person who was really put together, had that briefcase, was kind of walking slowly down the hallway. But if you asked a lawyer, which lawyer you would want to be, you'd want to be the one with all the, stuff coming out of your briefcase and that type of thing, because they're stressed. But that must mean that they have a ton of work to do. And that's, it's really seen as a badge of honor. At one of the law firms that I used to work at, if I had time to go out to lunch, I would have more work on my desk when I got back. Like if they saw that I had enough time to go out to lunch, even if it was with one of the partners, the other partner would come in and be like, do you not have enough work to do? Like, no, really, I'm good. I was just trying to eat. Which again is good for your mental health and wellness. Taking that break. Okay. Let's see here. We're going to skip this because I know you guys have a little bit of a time issue here.
We're doing okay.
Okay. So in 2016, there was this national study I'm sure you guys have heard about through the American Bar Association and Hazelden Betty Ford Foundation that ranked, the normal population, the regular population, and us. And it's pretty staggering. I don't think I need to say much with regards to this slide. We're a lot more impaired than the normal population. And again, this is due to the anxiety and stress of our industry. So this slide, again, I don't want to hit you guys with statistic after statistic, but just to kind of get it in your head that this is a really big issue, and this is why you do want to be able to recognize and refer people to the Lawyers Assistance Program. So of the percentage that said they needed mental health services, the red and the blue pie, only 37% got those services. So, there's this huge, 63% said, hey, I need help with depression, but I'm not going to get help. And then it's even worse in the substance abuse area. Of 93% of people who needed substance abuse services, they didn't get help. Only 7% said they would. Why do you guys think that is? Why would only 7% reach out for help? Yes?
Stigma of asking for assistance?
Absolutely. What are some other reasons?
They don't want to give up the habit.
Oh, well, okay, yes, there's that too, yes. There's that too.
don't
That's
wanna
not
give
one
up
of my
the
little
habit.
answers here, but we'll go with that.
A lot of people may not realize it was confidential. They may just think it's going to start a whole train.
Yeah, Dave's saying a lot of people may not realize it's confidential. They don't want to start a train of disclosure issues.
Yeah, absolutely. We present our volunteer training at the Judicial Education Conference every 2 years, and we have one whole section that deals with confidentiality immunity. And when we get our evaluations back, we have a judge presenting, 2 judges, and they actually wrote on the evaluations, we don't believe you. Like, we talked about the Supreme Court rule, and then they would say, we don't believe you. So it's like, okay, it is such a huge issue with us. There's time away from work. Especially if you're a solo practitioner, can you really take time away to go to treatment? Not necessarily. And then we also have the cost issue. Thankfully, we are starting to see more and more people being covered by health insurance, especially through the Affordable Care Act, although we don't necessarily know how long that's going to last, and what kind of services we're going to be able to receive for drug and alcohol assistance and mental health. But more and more solo practitioners are being covered, so that there is that plus. Also at LAP, we do have some treatment assistance funding available for people in need. So even if you have a friend or colleague that does not have health insurance and is really struggling, still send them to us. We will find a way to help them.
Let me just ask you a question, if I
Yes.
may. Scott Kozlov has done a lot of presentations on ARDC statistics, and the solo practitioner who's trying to do everything at once, like the one-arm paper hanger, is subject to a lot of stress. And they have one of the highest, shall we say, complaint, rates for the ARDC. What are you seeing in terms of the solo practitioner versus, mid-sized or large firm for people who need the services of LAP?
So that's interesting as well, because over the years, I would say the past 5-6 years, solo practitioners have been at the absolute highest of clients that come to LAP. And now neck and neck is coming with Firm Life. So I don't know why that is, because still being a solo practitioner is just, it's really difficult. But firm life must be getting harder and harder. I know within firms, they're changing the partner tracks. Every associate that comes in is not then becoming a partner, and they're putting them on different tracks. And again, there's that kind of underwork that is happening. Billing is changing. Clients are not putting up with the billable hour anymore. They're looking for more flat rate, that type of thing. And so, if you've been doing this too for 30 years and now all of a sudden you're being asked to change everything, that can be very stressful as well. So you would think solo would be up there. I mean, it is up there, but it's still neck and neck with firms right now. Okay. Okay, here we are. So this is just another graph that my deputy director put together that shows that the younger you are, the more hazardous drinking that you're engaging in. He loves this graph. I don't love this graph. He could talk for like 10 minutes on this graph, so we're just gonna skip this graph. Okay. What we're doing too is with the advent of the new MCLE requirement for substance abuse and mental health, we are actually training volunteers to go out and give presentations. And so this is not necessarily my presentation. So we have like one presentation that we are having multiple clinicians and multiple volunteers go out and do, because there's such a greater need now to meet this requirement. So if you're interested, if you like to speak, we would love to have you. So just to talk a little bit about kind of why we are, or why we are, in such a state with the legal population. There's individual factors, life situation factors, and organizational factors. So the individual factors, kind of, thinking like a lawyer. So that pessimism, that competitive nature, and are there any perfectionists in the audience?
No, not a one.
Yeah, okay. We actually walk a very fine line. I would say a huge percentage of us between, functioning normally and OCD. It's just right there. You could fall off right there. Also with the individual factors, just being, taught day one of law school to look for the holes in an argument, look for the negative, where are things going to go wrong. That makes you a great lawyer, but it makes you a really sucky human being, because if you take that, feelings and you take it home with your spouse, which...
Have you been talking to my wife?
I know.
Why does every conversation turn into a cross-examination? I don't do that.
No, not at all. Thankfully or unthankfully, both my husband and I are lawyers. So we're just really in shitty moods all the time, trying to look for that. But it's, I have called him out on it before, and he's called me out on it before. Why do you keep doing that? And I can't tell you as a therapist to stop doing that, because that would decrease your abilities as a lawyer. But what you need to do is you need to leave it at work and somehow then, turn into a normal human being at night and realize not everything, is going down the drain. So that's something to look at too. Again, the life situation factors, the spouse, the partner who doesn't understand what being a lawyer is like. And that's why we do have these volunteer trainings, and we train people to offer peer support. So someone who has walked in your shoes, has been there before. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to have had an addiction or depression. It could mean, you were a solo practitioner at one point starting out, and it was very stressful, anxious, and you didn't know how to get things going. So we do train people. Health and finances can be extremely difficult, especially now, your speaker prior is talking about, she doesn't totally know what's going to happen. Everything's kind of up and all over the place, and the unknown can be very scary. Organizational factors, high pressure, little credit, zero-sum game. There's a winner and there's a loser. What other industry is there like that? My husband, the lawyer, likes to talk about how, if you are a brain surgeon, that's obviously a little more stressful job than what we have, but you're not walking into the surgery room and there's another brain surgeon operating there at the same exact time, and whoever finishes first wins. But that's what the law is. You're always competing against someone else. You're always trying to beat someone else. And to our credit, we have not all gone crazy at this point, because it's a very difficult way to live. And so that's what causes all this stress and anxiety. Client expectations as well. Very few, in my experience, clients have realistic expectations. Unfortunately, I was a juvenile public defender, so maybe I had it the worst because they always confess. And then they walk in and they're like, "Can you get me off?" And I'm like, "No, here, let me show you your confession." And so they would get all upset and that type of thing. But even when I moved into private practice, especially with family law, they would walk in with these crazy requests, and you were expected to not only make it happen, but get it done very quickly. And so those client expectations can cause a lot of stress and anxiety as well. Okay, does anyone know who this guy is?
It's Robbie.
Who is it?
Isn't that Robbie?
Oh, I don't know if it's Robbie. What
Robbie
show
the
is it
robot.
from?
Lost in
Yes,
Space.
Danger Will Robinson. I have to be careful. We love this slide at LAP, but if we present, to too young of an audience, they're all looking at me like, we just presented at Kent Law School and they totally didn't get it. So Danger Will Robinson. Okay. Is it Robbie? I think it might be.
I think it might be Robbie.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm gonna have to look at that.
Robbie the robot.
Okay, so this is where you want to be cautious and careful, okay? So again, we're not the alcohol police, but this is a quick way for you guys to to remember and realize. So what to look for, follow the map. And this can also be for mental health issues as well. So mood or attitudinal disturbances, what does that mean? All of a sudden someone who maybe would go out to lunch, have their door open, say good morning to the receptionist, be kind of chatty. If that starts to change, one of the biggest things that we see is that, or that we're concerned with, is that closed door. Someone who's isolating, someone who's kind of all of a sudden gone all the time, someone who every time you go past their office, the lights are off, you don't know where they are, kind of what's going on. That's a big thing. Someone who is starting to, not trust their own judgment, kind of be, fly off the handle a little bit, be very tense, that type of thing. Appearance or physical changes. So, and again, this can be for both substance abuse and mental health, is looking a little more disheveled. We love the calls where the firms call us and tell us that, the lawyers are actually, they're not dressing appropriately anymore. They may not be using, a correct hygiene or grooming. That's a really hard conversation to have. And it's a change. So if this person always looked that way and they were never the snappiest dresser, that's one thing. But if there's a change, then that's something to be concerned about. Productivity and quality of work. This is something where we get a lot of referrals from judges who will call us up and say, "Hey, this lawyer, I'm not sure if there's something going on. I don't want to say anything. I see that their motions, they're just not as well written. They're still okay, but they're just not prepared all the time. They seem, a little off, seem a little disheveled." And again, it can be an indicator of mental health or substance abuse issues. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about anxiety. Has anyone experienced anxiety in their lives? Yes. And I think too, the mental health issues still really have that stigma attached to them. I think it's much more, I don't want to use the word hip, but okay to say, "Hey, I'm an alcoholic." Like, it's still very hard for people to say, but I think it's more of a norm where, like, if I'm going to walk up and say, "Hey, I suffer from depression," I just don't, we still don't hear that yet. So these next couple slides are a little harder for people to admit, to talk about, to deal with. Okay, so in addition to substance abuse, the most common responses to stressors are anxiety. So let's talk a little bit about, I'm gonna fall off here at some point. So unexplained trembling, kind of that nervous feeling, that could be a symptom that you're looking for. Headaches. Rumination, that's one of my favorite lawyer things. Does anyone know what rumination is?
Can't talk to ourselves anymore?
Chewing cud.
What?
Can't talk to ourselves anymore?
You can talk to yourself, but if you keep talking to yourself over and over again. So rumination can be both positive and negative. It's kind of the playing in your mind again and again, something that happened. So this would be, an example would be, you have an 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock court call, and you go up to the bench, and immediately the judge gives you a crappy ruling. You're walking back to the table, and you're kind of, thinking about it. You're just pissed, and you're like, okay. So you put your case down, that's fine. But then you go to your next courtroom and you're still kind of thinking about it. Even though you're talking about another case, it's still kind of playing in your mind. And then all of a sudden you realize at lunch, you're out to lunch with a colleague or whatever, but you're still thinking about it. You're not 100% in the conversation. You're still playing it again and again and again. It kind of rolls into the afternoon. You go home to family or friends. You're playing with your kids, and again, you're thinking about it. And then the best thing is when you try to go to bed and you're still thinking about it, and then you start dreaming about it. So obviously that is negative rumination. Not good. Positive rumination is, if you're trying to solve a really stressful or significant problem, really thinking about it, or grief, loss of a loved one. Then you should just dive in and ruminate, and that allows the grief process to go forward. But negative rumination, unfortunately, has a lot of bad effects. It can really affect you medically. It can increase your heart rate, increase your blood pressure, because as you can imagine, rumination creates a negative frame of mind. And so if you all of a sudden have a negative frame of mind, day in and day out, it is going to affect you physically. So no more ruminating. The one thing I will tell you is that I'm not going to tell you not to ruminate at all. We have to ruminate in order to solve problems, and we have to ruminate in order to allow ourselves to be pissed that the judge screwed us, okay? But what you want to do is to say, okay, I've got 5 more cases up today. I am not going to think about this right now. I'm going to go back at lunch, and I will give myself 20 minutes or a half an hour to be totally mad, and I will ruminate to my heart's content, and then I will move on. So give yourself that time, and then you can move on. Okay, digestive problems obviously come with anxiety, increased worry, irritability. So these are all things that you want to be looking for in a colleague. Decrease in productivity again, and a lot of these are going to be similar to other, like depression and substance abuse. Unexplained pains, perfectionism, because you're so worried about being perfect that it actually causes you to make more mistakes, and it creates that stress cycle, and you're just trying to be, you never want to get it wrong, and so you never actually start the motion or appellate brief or whatever. Fatigue is a big one. Okay, so looking out for, if someone starts to use wording like, I can't cope, I just can't deal with this, it's just all too much. If they're not showing up to work, and this is, again, not their normal pattern, work tasks taking longer to complete, again, because of the perfectionism, because they're so anxious about being perfect. Increased fear of potential consequences. So, when you turn something into your supervisor or your boss or the judge, it's not necessarily going to be perfect, but they're so worried about it that it just makes them stagnant. They can't do anything at all. And missed deadlines is another thing to look for. Okay, so anxiety, there's a couple different ways I want you to think about anxiety. There's generalized anxiety, which we just kind of call regular anxiety. But social anxiety, is a big thing too, looking out, especially during like these receptions, holiday parties, that type of thing. How do people get over social anxiety?
They drink.
They drink, yes, which is okay, because we're not the alcohol police, right? Okay, but we get a lot of referrals right after Christmas. Why do you think that is? Because people do have social anxiety, and they go a little crazy at their firm holiday party because they're trying to deal with the social anxiety, and so then they come and they visit lab. Anxiety or panic attacks, I don't know if you yourself have ever had a panic attack or know anybody that does. They're horrible. They very much mirror heart attacks. So if you ever run into somebody who ends up getting taken away in the ambulance to the hospital, and you inquire later, oh, did you have a heart attack? No. Well, it could be a panic attack. It could be an opening for you to talk to them about, well, maybe you should go see lab. Maybe there's some other things going on in your life, that they could help you with. Post-traumatic stress disorder, and again, my favorite, OCD with the perfectionism. Depression. See, this is this exciting. This is your last thing of the day, and this is the exciting, enlightening things we get to talk about. Okay.
And we have to finish up within 45 minutes, so.
Oh, okay, yeah, where am I at?
We only have 45 minutes left, so.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay.
He's lying, okay. Depression, difficulty thinking, concentrating, or making decisions. So I still remember one day at the law firm, I was typing a motion, and it was I was struggling with family law at that point, which is why I'm no longer practicing as a lawyer. But just typing a motion, and my brain just shut down. It just all of a sudden said, it's too much, Robin. We're just going to shut down for a good 10 minutes. And I came back to like 10 minutes later, and I'm like, I don't know what happened to that time period. But sometimes that happens. But so if you have, run into someone who, again, is just, you're talking to them, but you can see that they're just not listening or they're not taking it in, or you need a decision made on a case or a client or whatever, and they're hemming and hawing, and this is unusual for them, again, could be a sign of depression. Changes in appetite. It could be eating more, which is usually my favorite, or eating less. Feelings of worthlessness or guilt. Loss of interest in previously enjoyable activities. And unfortunately, you're going to see this is going to be repeated during our very exciting suicide slides. Okay, changes in sleep. Fatigue. Thoughts, plans, attempts of suicide. Okay. So the things, again, to look out for: I don't feel right, I don't know what's going on, I'm just not feeling like myself these days. When you go in and their door is shut and you knock on the door and you ask to come in, they don't even ask you to sit down because they're isolating at that point, but you sit down anyway because you're a good friend. But you can't get anything out of them. So again, the inability to feel pleasure, asking them, hey, what'd you do this weekend? Nothing. Where normally they would go hiking or biking or doing something with their kids, so a change in that. Work tasks taking longer to complete, noticeable rework, because again, the difficulty concentrating causes you to make mistakes, and then you have to correct those mistakes, which take longer, which obviously are not going to make your client or your supervisor very happy, so now you're just depressed, stressed, and anxious about that. So again, that vicious cycle starts to continue. Absenteeism. Indifference, apathy to self and or others. So this would again be, where, a lawyer loses a case, or, a client gets a bad ruling from a judge, and the lawyer just doesn't care. You don't want to care too much, because then we've entered the world of compassion fatigue, but just, having a little interest in what's going on.
The main of our existence in this room are these home inspections.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. But, a few situations as stupid as this. Someone writes a letter with 25 things they think are wrong with the person's house.
We're not naming names here, but okay. Yeah, somebody writes a letter with
Someone writes
25
a letter,
things
they
wrong.
say
on
there's
the
25 things wrong. It's a $500,000 house in Arlington Heights. Anybody would take it tomorrow. But there's 25
Right.
things wrong with this house. It's almost should be condemned. Just take the rope, the tape, put it across the front. That's how it makes the seller feel. So we'll come back and say, well, our guy's, he's moving to Arizona. He really wants to keep it together. He'll do 12 things. I get this letter back. My clients are glad to accept your offer as long as you do the other 13 things. That has happened to me this fall. So as far as the indifference, it does bring it out.
Absolutely.
So I don't know what the outlet is, you've got a seller who says, well, what good are you if that's, can't you put this fire out? And,
Right. Right.
Or here's a good one. Come back firmly, but just make sure I don't lose the buyer.
But
So
no
we're now,
pressure, but
even
that's
though
what
we're
every
not
client
making
says.
6%, we're making $500 to $1,000,
Right.
we now are the holder of the destiny of where they're going to live.
Right.
So what's a good word on that to us?
So we have entered the unrealistic expectations world, and there is no great solution. But I also, if starting up front, and you guys may already be having these conversations with these clients, but
No, I'm talking the other attorney.
the other attorney.
Oh, this is the hero who wants to show that,
Yeah, they're
is
tough.
name calling? Can you
Yeah.
do name calling at least or something? Or,
No,
anyway.
and that is where, it is totally appropriate to, I wouldn't use the word indifference, but you just want to remain calm, because you don't want to also enter into the compassion fatigue where you get so entrenched in it and you get so wrapped up in it, and you're clearly not going to be able to do all 25 things, and you go back to your client and say, okay, we're gonna offer this 12, and then see where they're at. I don't.
No, but they come back after having been told what time part of knowing what you understand.
Right.
They come back and say, no, we're fine as long as you do everything we want in the first.
Right. No, and I don't envy you, and I don't have a good I don't have a good solution for you.
Let me just say here that you know, I don't want to suggest that the practice of real estate is terrible and it's going to induce all this stress and everything. I mean, if you look at real estate practice, the transactional practice, as compared to, say, your litigation situation where it's a winner and a loser, theoretically, after a successful closing, everybody's happy, right? Because buyers got the place, the sellers got the money. Now, the inspection issues can be the bane of our existence, as Dave points out. It's got to be a lot of trouble to get through these things. But in theory, this area of practice should be somewhat less stressful.
I would say in theory, but you know, and that's, I don't think that people give you guys enough credit. You know, when I talk about the areas of the law that are stressful and that, you know, are toxic, you know, then we're talking like juvenile law, DCFS court, being a state's attorney with these rapes and murders and, you know, all that type of thing. I think, you know, people aren't paying attention to contract lawyers, to real estate, to trust in estates. It can be just as stressful. There can be just as much on the line. And I think you guys, you know, you have to own that and you have to stick together in these types of organizations because, you know, if you go talk to your friend who's practicing family law, they're going to be like, yeah, talk to the hands because you don't even know how I have it. You guys need to be your own peer support people. Because
and since there's a lot of solo practitioners involved in this area, you know, an entity like this or an association is an opportunity for interaction and, you know.
And to not isolate.
Yeah,
Again,
exactly.
to not isolate. Okay. Unfortunately, we need to talk a little bit about suicide, and we want to use the word suicide. If you have a colleague or friend that you think is going down this path, this is the word you want to use. Most people look at me like, you're crazy. If I use the word, then they're more likely to do it. And it's actually the opposite. If you kind of dance around the issue, they are then more likely to go ahead with it. If you use the word suicide, it kind of jolts people and they're like, oh, wait, no, that's a serious word. I didn't mean that, you know, that type of thing. So you actually want to use this word. So the things that you're looking for, expressions of hopelessness, powerlessness, worthlessness, shame, guilt, self-hatred, inadequacy, declining performance and interest in work. So again, this is where that indifference, different than like, oh, these home inspectors are driving me crazy. I just can't care as much as I need to. Okay. Loss of interest and participation in, again, social activities and hobbies. So this is similar to depression because depression ultimately can lead to these types of feelings. So again, asking them, you know, if you're concerned, asking them those questions. Hey, well, what did you do this weekend? What are you doing this week? You know, what are you doing for the holidays? That type of thing. Isolation, dysregulation of sleeping and eating habits. So again, a change here. You know, if someone comes in and they just look like they're so tired, you know, kind of asking them like, well, how are you sleeping at night? You know, what's going on? You know, don't ask, you know, you want to necessarily ask them like, hey, are you depressed? But just kind of, you know, talk around the issue and ask them what are they doing to take care of themselves, what are they doing on the weekend. But ultimately, if you do feel like it is leading to suicide, you definitely want to use the word. Acquiring means to commit suicide. So, you know, again, if someone's telling you they're stockpiling pills, they've purchased a weapon, making a plan, where, when, and how. So there is thoughts, suicide ideation, and then plans. So it's a 3-step tiered process. Giving away possessions. Yes?
So let's get serious for a moment.
1 minute, Anna. Anna. Sorry.
We're going to get serious here.
Okay.
So let's say you ask someone, you know, are you thinking about committing suicide? And they say, yes. What do I do then?
Okay. I am going to come to that.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. And I will say all these things with a grain of salt, because unfortunately we have had suicides in the state of Illinois. I would say in the past 6 months, we had a suicide in Kane County where everybody, I mean, his obituary read like the who's who lawyer in Kane County. I mean, he, you know, was very successful, had a wonderful family, volunteered. Everyone was saying, we just didn't know. And that can be true. People are very good about hiding these things, especially lawyers. We're very good at hiding our emotions and our feelings and regulating. You know, oftentimes if we're in a firm, we have support staff, we have paralegals, we have secretaries that can do things, that can pick up the tasks that may be falling by the wayside. So again, I don't want everyone to think, walk away, you know, if unfortunately this does touch your life and you're like, wait, why didn't I see it? I learned about this. Sometimes you just can't see it, but there are there are signs that sometimes are noticeable ahead of time. Okay. Again, alcohol or drug use, an increased type of use just from their, something different than their normal pattern. I don't want to again throw statistics at you, but I do want you guys to take this seriously. Back in, and this is our latest statistics, I want to get something more current. With 36 states reporting, 19 states had 42 suicides in the legal community. Tennessee had 6. And I would say within the past 6 to 9 months in Illinois, we've had 3 so far this year that we know of.
And this is an ABA study of LAP programs throughout the country?
Yes. So the American Bar Association has a Commission on Lawyers Assistance Program. Most states have some form of a LAP program. They have one in Hawaii, and the director there is a graduate of my law school as well, and how he ended up there and I ended up here, I still don't understand. Okay, so what not to do? So let's actually talk nuts and bolts here. You don't want to argue about the right or wrong of suicide. If someone does tell you, you're kind of going through this conversation and they ultimately say, I just don't want to be here anymore, then you ask the question, are you thinking of suicide? And if they say yes, don't say, oh, well, that's wrong. You definitely don't want to go to the religious argument. No offense to people who are very religious in the audience. It's not going to make sense to them in that moment. They're not thinking clearly. Avoid platitudes like you have so much to live for, it will be better tomorrow, because in their mind, it really won't. They don't have a lot to live for. And even though you're seeing the big picture of their life and you're seeing like, hey, I just don't get it. You've got so much going for you. In that moment, whatever they're focused on, they just can't see it. And so you saying that is actually going to make them feel more stressed out and anxious. Don't discount their problems. Again, if they have the world's worst home inspector on their ass, and it's just driving them crazy and it's pushed them to the edge, which you're like, okay, big deal. You've got one crazy home inspector. But again, there might be a series of things that have led them to this moment, and that home inspector has just pushed them over the edge. Don't discount it. Say, man, I totally get it. Those home inspectors can be really bad, and they can just make me so stressed out and anxious, and they're so unfair and so unreasonable with their requests. Just kind of be in that moment with them. Try and get in their space. And the biggest thing is refuse to be sworn to secrecy. And they will all try and swear you to secrecy. And this is the one moment that we will break confidentiality. And we have done this on numerous occasions where we have sent, we'll have a client on the phone and we'll do a wellness check with the Chicago PD. And man, they are pissed that we've broken confidentiality, but they typically always come back and say thank you for doing that. So, if someone does say, I am thinking of suicide, but I don't want you to tell anybody, say to them, I can't do that. You're too important to me. We need to get help. And if you think that, you're going to lose a relationship or a colleague or a friendship over that, I hate to say it, that's okay. If you think they're not going to share with you again about their feelings down the road, unfortunately, that's okay. You could be saving their life. Okay, what to do? Okay, so we have our ACE card questionnaire. So we have ask, care, and escort. And I don't think they provided that to you guys, did they? You guys didn't, did you guys get a handout with the ACE card?
It's not part of the PowerPoint. We
Okay.
have the notes from the PowerPoint, but I don't think it's in there.
Okay, I am going to send this to you so that everybody can kind of keep this. It's only 6 questions. It's designed to be used by a colleague or a peer. And so, if they answer, yes to the first 2 questions, then it's done. You want to move on. You want to get them the help they need. But the ACE card questionnaire is basically, asking them, are you having thoughts? Do you have a plan? Care, the questions are showing them that I'm here with you in this moment. I understand where you're at, and I'm going to be here for you. And then escorting them is you want to make a call right in that moment to a loved one, to the managing partner, to 911, and either escort. You don't want to let them out of your sight at that point. And so, and this is when, if someone says I'm suicidal, I'm having thoughts, but they don't have the plan, they don't have a plan and they don't have the means, then you can, call a family friend, managing partner, if they have the means, they have a plan, that's where you want to get them to the emergency room, and you actually want to escort them. This is easy to use, and I apologize you guys don't have it. I will get it to you. It only takes a few minutes. This is just something, I know it sounds silly, but you can kind of stick in your desk, and you guys will probably never need this level, but just to have it there, just in case. And let me just check my time. Okay, I'm doing good on time. Okay, so let's talk about referring. Okay. So how do you get people to the lawyer's assistance program? People, if you're having a conversation with someone, they may come into your office and start bringing up these issues themselves. You yourself may feel like, I know this person is having issues, what do I do about it? What you can do is you can call LAP, and we will talk you through what questions to ask people, how to approach them, how to get around them saying, because they're going to blow you off right away because they're going to say, oh, no, I'm fine, I got it. We will help you kind of get past that hurdle. So always feel comfortable calling LAP. And again, it's 100% confidential. You don't need to give us your name, and you don't need to give us who you're calling about. When you are ready to talk to someone about LAP, showing them the LAP brochure, if you have it, you can always print it off the website. Again, highlighting LAP's confidentiality, because that's going to be the biggest hurdle that you have to overcome. And say calling LAP is easy, it's free. The biggest suggestion I can give you is say, let's do it together. Because especially someone who is depressed, they don't have a lot of oomph in their life. They don't have a lot of like, okay, I'm gonna try and help myself. It's very hard when you're depressed to do anything for yourself, even if it's a positive step towards getting rid of the depression. So you making that call together. We've also suggested that maybe you come in with the person. You don't have to sit through the assessment with them, but them having that colleague or friend to walk them in and sit with them in the lobby. Calling that kind of ivory tower in the city can be a little ominous and overwhelming. And so, you walking in with them can be very helpful. Let me just check one thing here. Yes. Okay. So how to call LAP with the person. So one on phone with LAP. When you make the call, and if that person is with you, ask to speak to a clinician and give the clinician some information. Get permission from the person and say, can I make the call? Can I just tell them? I don't even need to tell them your name. I'm just going to tell them what's going on and why we're calling. Okay. And then try and put the person on the phone to speak with the clinician so they can make an appointment. And after they make the appointment, ask them, what date is that? Can I come with you? Or, I just want to be there to support you. What's the best way? That type of thing. If you are calling LAP without the person, so this is someone, again, you haven't even approached yet, or you have approached and it didn't go well, you call or email LAP and explain what you are concerned about and why. You don't have to be a clinician. I gave you all these, terms, depression, stress, anxiety. Just tell us what you're seeing and what you're not seeing, some of the symptoms and that type of thing. You don't have to be diagnosing. What kind of contact you've had with the person. What's really helpful too is, especially too if you're emailing, to share information that, I do know their family, or I do know some other friends of theirs or other colleagues, or sometimes, we've had people call in on opposing counsel and say, I don't know this attorney from Adam, but there was clearly an issue going on that this person needs help, but I don't know them at all. That's really helpful to know. Whether or not the person knows you're calling. Sometimes they don't want to call with you, but they're okay if you go back to your office and make the call. I know it sounds crazy, but it happens. And how LAP can best contact the person. Okay, what happens next? So if the person is calling in themselves, we will set up an appointment for them to come and do an assessment. And we typically don't even call it an assessment. We call it a conversation. We don't want to be too clinical about it. And we always tell them we're going to talk about what is bothering you in this moment, what's bothering you right now. How can we best serve you and come up with a plan of action? The legal community seems to react well to that, being action-oriented. So If we don't have that person on the phone, and let's say, go back to my example of the opposing counsel calling in and saying, I didn't know anybody, I don't know anybody that they're connected with. What we will do, like if it's out in Winnebago County, we will call LAP-trained volunteers who are bound by confidentiality and ask them, have you heard of this person? Do you know of this person? Can you very discreetly and confidentially ask around and see, are other people seeing, are they showing up to court on time? Are they showing up to court at all? What are people seeing? That type of thing, because we need to get more information. We don't typically cold call people, because you can imagine that goes oh so well. Anna, this is Robin from LAP. I hear you're having some alcohol issues. You were at that real estate function and you were very drunk, so yes. That does not go well. So we will, if we are absolutely stuck, cold call people, but we like to try and get a connection with somebody. Reach out to the person again. This is the cold call. So if you are concerned about someone, we've had a lot of feedback from judges, lawyers, and law students that, they get it. Okay, we're going to recognize the symptoms. We understand how to refer, but we don't want to refer. We don't want to narc on them. We don't want to put their license in jeopardy. They're our friends, that type of thing. Justice McMorrow, many, many years ago, did a video for LAP, and in it, and I should have the actual quote, but she talks about how, basically we're a family. The Illinois legal community is a family, even though it's so adversarial and we're always fighting each other to win, that it is really our duty to look out for one another and make sure that we are well. Because if someone is impaired, they really are sick. I mean, this is an illness that they need assistance with. If you knew of someone with cancer or with diabetes, you would reach out to them and try and assist. Mental health and unfortunately addiction does carry with it that certain stigma. But that's why we're coming out to you and speaking about these issues, so hopefully we can reduce that stigma and get people the assistance that they need.
Let me just ask a question about, when do you make this decision? Because, I've talked to board members, and obviously you're not a miracle worker. You can't be. There's a lot of careful assessment that has to precede taking a step here. But, you go to court and you see a colleague, we'll call her Betty, and she's more subdued than you normally see her. She's not as talkative.
Right.
And you just chalk it up to her having a bad day. And then a couple of weeks later, you see her at a closing, and she still seems a little subdued. Mm-hmm. And, you say, well, she's just, having a tough time, and you don't really have any interaction with her. And a few weeks later, you find out that she's committed suicide, and you think, full of guilt, gee, should I have done something? I mean, what kind of advice can you give a practitioner who says, something's triggering some kind of a red flag here, but when do I act upon it?
Right. We have a mantra at LAP, call early and call often. We can obviously assist people more at the beginning of an issue than we can later, but we will take you at whatever spectrum, end of the spectrum. But when should you call? Obviously the first time, it could just be a bad day, but when you start to see a pattern emerge, that's when you might want to be concerned. And you may not, necessarily call LAP right away, although if you want to call LAP to figure out how to approach her in a way that is not, is very subtle and is very supportive, then we can help you with that. There's specific questions and types of questions that you can ask, very open-ended, that can get you the information that you may need to determine, oh, you know what, this is just a blip in the road, or maybe this is a LAP issue. Absolutely. We do have two procedures that we use: soft interventions and formal interventions. Formal intervention is very much like what you see on TV. They are peer-led by a judge and typically 2 LAP volunteers. But soft intervention is usually the way we go first. We've been experiencing a lot with firms calling us saying, again, we're seeing some issues, that type of thing. And one of the first questions we ask is, how long has this been going on? And most of the time, it's like 6 to 8 months. We're like, holy cow, like 6 to 8 months. And by that time, the rumor mill has started. People are talking about this person in the break room, and their reputation is decreasing. And so when talking with these big firms and these managing partners, we're trying to get them to reach out sooner. And one of the ways is through the soft intervention. Basically, what it is having 1 or 2 people that the person trusts or is close to, sit down and have a conversation with them, again, with these lap questions, and talking to them and trying to ascertain kind of what's going on, and can we get you some assistance. If it's a firm, they may require them to come to lap. If it's a solo practitioner, it might be one of your colleagues out here saying, we think this might be a good idea, can we help you, that type of thing. But once you see a pattern start to emerge, that's the thing. Now, the one exception with that is alcohol. And attorneys typically use alcohol over drugs, and why is that? Pardon?
Easier to get.
Alcohol's legal.
It's legal. That's the number one. Your number two answer. Okay, you win. You win the door prize. Yes. Wouldn't that be fun? That's the one exception. I mean, if a pattern starts to emerge with alcohol use, then that is a sign that you might be moving down the road to maybe wanting to take a step back. But binge drinking is another big issue that most people don't think of as a problem. And we don't like to label or use terms, but most people don't think binge drinking means you're an alcoholic, okay? But binge drinking absolutely means you have a substance abuse issue, okay? So if someone tonight, I'm not saying it's gonna be any of you guys, but ties one on this evening, okay, does a little binge drinking, but then, and you don't see the person again for 2 or 3 months at another one of these events, and then they do it again, and then they do it, and then it's another 2 or 3, and maybe you see them in between and you're like, this person doesn't drink at all. That is an issue that is as well. So that's when the pattern thing, it's not as crucial. Oh, I got 2 people. Oh, I know you, Joel. You're a lap volunteer.
Right.
I'm outing people.
Right, yeah, a couple years ago I participated in the training, so maybe you can mention how people could participate in
Yes.
that. But I did
Thank you.
have a question
Yes.
also, and that's one of imminency, and sometimes if you do speak with somebody and they do call lap and you set up an appointment, time may not be on their side. What do you do in a situation where you feel it's a little more imminent? I mean, what other resources are there other than waiting a week to have an appointment with lab?
We typically get people in the next day or 2 days. So we're very, very fast. We also have a Park Ridge office that people can come to because sometimes it's stressful for people to come into the city. Otherwise, we could send a lap volunteer out to speak to that person. Or if it's a hospital type situation, we would utilize the police department and do a well-being check. And we have done that as well. But Joel brought up a good point, so he's definitely going to get a gold star. If you're interested in learning more about LAP, we do have a volunteer training June 15th. And even if you go through the training, it doesn't mean you have to become a volunteer. You're not in shackles after that point. But you do get all 6 professionalism and ethics credits, and it also qualifies, obviously, for the substance abuse and mental health. But you're going to learn more intimately about these issues, how to provide peer support, how to conduct interventions. And it's really, really important. And we're actually going through, we've been training volunteers for 15, 20 years now. So Joel, you're going to be getting your call soon. We've actually been going through and calling every single volunteer to re-interview them, see if they still want to be involved, and get more specific information from them. Because when a client comes in and wants peer support, we want to try and match them up with someone as closely or similar to them as we can, so it can really walk in their shoes, the idea of that. So June 15th in Chicago, and then I don't know if anyone's not from here, but also Carbondale.
What are some of the firms and the bar associations doing to combat depression and anxiety before it gets to that point?
Okay. Very good question. The Illinois State Bar Association next year is very gratefully going to be focusing, one of Jim McCluskey's themes is going to be on LAP. And really trying to reduce the stigma associated with talking about these issues. The Chicago Bar Association has done a great job. They've been hosting a bunch of forums, and they have a bunch of committees. They actually have a mindfulness and wellness committee that we take part in. And I think more and more people are talking about this. Firm-wise, We're starting to see some wellness committees forming. Diversity and inclusion was the big thing like 10 years ago, and now there's like a diversity and inclusion manager in every firm. Not so with wellness. I think it's starting to catch up and starting to. Is it real? I don't know. You know, we've gotten some feedback from therapists and clinicians and providers that have been hired to go into these firms to provide the services, but then none of the lawyers show up because they have to bill. So, you know, is it window dressing at this point? Maybe, but if it, you know, it keeps pushing, hopefully it will become more than window dressing. But I think it's important that the conversation's happening and getting the word out there. One of the biggest things was this study that was done by the American Bar Association and Hazelden Betty Ford, because we were able to go back to the Supreme Court and ask for an increase in funding. That increase in funding allowed us to hire another clinician in Chicago, allowed us to hire a marketing outreach person to get the word out about LAP. We were able to open a satellite office in Bloomington, Illinois. And we're hoping to open another satellite office this year. So, you know, those statistics, while daunting, I think will eventually help the Illinois legal population. And you, sir?
So, Robin, when I call my friend Dave with my 24 inspection
It was
items.
25, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I'm only going to ask 24, and he starts yelling at me. And I and I call Lap up saying he's gone nuts. I think you said just that you don't then contact back the ARDC at that point.
Correct. We do have questions where people will call in and say, this person's acting inappropriately, or this person's acting crazy, they're being rude, they're being obnoxious. And uncivil behavior absolutely can be a mental health or substance abuse issue. And we do deal with, we call it disruptive behavior, it's a nicer term, versus being an ass. But we also will then instruct people to call the ARDC. They have an ethics attorney on call that you can call in confidentially and kind of give them your fact pattern. And they will then tell you or give you suggestions and kind of what to do. A lot of times it's call LAP. And then sometimes we will have the person come in and do an intake or assessment and figure out, like, is this actually an ARDC issue or is this actually an us issue? If it's an ARDC issue, we can't do anything about it. So even if it's a HIML violation, you know.
So just the fact that someone refers a person to LAP, you know, you're not sure, but you just think that's not going back on their.
No, there's no record, there's no anything like that.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's an actual Supreme Court Rule 1.6 that says that. The judges don't believe me, but I hope you guys do.
We have to finish within the next 20 minutes.
Okay.
So
I am impressed, I have to say, you are the only group, and I will say the only group that has ever asked questions. So you guys are great. Yes, we will come back.
wow,
Yes.
Melanie.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if this is so much of a question as maybe a statement, but it seems to me like I've met a lot of solo practitioners over the last 12 years. And I do practice management consulting in addition to my own practice. And it seems to me like a lot of the stress involved is not just from practicing law or from clients, because obviously that's a big part of it, but also from just trying to run a business, which can be totally separate from the legal work itself. And I really feel like our law schools and our bar associations, and there's all kinds of people that could help with this, but are doing a disservice to our profession by not teaching people that want to be solo practitioners or small law firms how to do that. You don't learn that in law school. I mean, at least most law schools. And I probably went to law school more recently than many people in the room, and they don't teach you that. I mean, we had a legal writing program at Kent, and it was like praised as wonderful because most people didn't learn legal writing in law school, you know? So it's like, you know, I really feel like that would be a really great place to start that discussion, and could help to I'm not saying, obviously, these kind of things are still going to be an issue, but I do think that I mean, that could cut back on a fair amount of anxiety if that was addressed or taught earlier in our careers than later.
Absolutely. A couple things. One, once our year of LAP starts with the ISBA, I would love you to write an article about that. So please see me after. We have those issues all the time, especially with solo practitioners. We are trying to address them. You know, we have to kind of be confined to our mission statement, and we can't teach practice management. However, there's a couple ways we deal with it, because the practice management, if it fails, it leads to stress or anxiety and depression. So it's totally related. We offer a young lawyers and law student support group in which many of those issues kind of come up, and they're able to, the big thing with the support groups is not feeling like you're the only one who's having this issue, that you're totally isolated. We also, within our men's group that we offer, my deputy director was just in my office the other day, and he's like, can we start a solo practitioners group because they are having these practice management issues? And he's like, does that fall within our mission? And I said, yes, for that reason. And then we were kind of tossing around the idea of maybe, you know, we're going to be doing clinical work in there to deal with the stress and anxiety, but maybe we have guest speakers come in to talk about, like, maybe they could identify we're having this particular issue, maybe having a guest speaker come in that's had more experience and practice in that area and help them. So we're kind of toying with that idea as well.
And tied into what Melanie just said, one of the issues is that if you have a lot of work to do and you're a sole practitioner, that's a good thing, but
Yes.
you find out that you're the one who has to make sure that there are enough paper clips because no one else is going to buy them for you.
Yep.
So you have to then make the decision as to whether or not you pay someone to do that, in which case you have to earn more money.
Right.
And you have to work harder because now you have to pay someone to go buy the paper clips.
Right.
So it's more than just, you know, buying software or maintaining the business side of your practice. It's also making some key decisions as to when you have enough business that's going to justify bringing on someone on board to do the things that you should be doing because you have a law degree.
Yeah, and I've walked in those shoes, absolutely, because I'm a lawyer and I'm a therapist and I'm the executive director of LAP. I don't know how to run a business. I don't know how to budget. I don't know how to do HR. I don't, you know, about buying and ordering, and all of a sudden, yeah, you're having to do all these things, and it can be very overwhelming. And if you forget to order the paper clips or order the paper, and you have to copy something, all of a sudden, yeah. So I do think I do want to push the envelope and start kind of going into that. At our volunteer training, we started to add vendors, but vendors that are specifically designed to be there to reduce an attorney or lawyer's stress. One of the things is Smokeball, which is a practice management software, which doesn't solve all issues, but having accountants there for lawyers, having marketing people there that only, you know, specialize in lawyers.
And,
so
and
some
because
of these other
Melanie is
services.
running our mentoring program, and I owe her, I'll mention that there's also Clio that she's involved in. There are lots of practice
yes.
management software.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and we would love to have you at the volunteer training. But just, yeah, some of these other, because there are more and more options for solo practitioners, it can get overwhelming too, but at least introducing them to these things do now exist. But so, yeah, we're hoping to push that envelope with our mission.
So we have time for only 14 more questions.
My
yes.
kids need to eat.
We do have to, you know, hold your attention for 30 seconds, and then we'll segue to the holiday gathering out in the lobby. But please, go ahead.
I believe you have some CLEs online.
Oh, yes.
Would you like to tell everyone about them? They've been very good. I've
Great.
enjoyed them.
And we're actually hoping to improve those because some of them are older. So we are getting more and more online. So yeah, if you guys need more CLE and you really just don't want to get out of your pajamas, you can go to illinoislap.org. And we have about 4 on there, and there's 2 or 3 more coming. So it's really easy to kind of get your professionalism credits that way.
Let's talk about the professionalism credit, you know, because we're in the reporting period with the new amendment to 794D, is it? So it started July 1st of 2017.
Right.
It'll be through June 30th of 2019. So this 1 hour, assuming we get it, would be part of your requirement, and you have to have a certain number of hours. They've done this presentation several times. We have no doubt but that our request to have this approved for professionalism credit will be granted. However, we just haven't had it formally come through yet. So today, You know, you can fill out your evaluation. There's one for Lori, and then there's one for Robin. You can get a certificate of attendance in your MCLE credit for Lori's presentation. For Robin's, because we haven't officially been notified that it's going to qualify, and I have no doubt, but we're going to be careful, we'll email you the certificate for the 1-hour professionalism credit later on.
Yes, and if there's any difficulties, I will make it happen. I also wanted to announce that we do have another CLE event coming up, if I can find it. In January, we offer a yoga and mindfulness class for lawyers.
And for those of you who thought yoga was happening today, I'm sorry, but there is alcohol.
So if you are downtown at 20 South Clark, it is January 12th. If you're a practitioner of yoga or if you just want to try it for the first time, please come, but it also qualifies for that one CLE, or if you've got this done today for the professionalism and ethics credit. So
That's great. Any other questions for Robin?
Yes.
Joel.
Something you said before.
It just made me think about some anxiety that we have with technology. Okay, not everybody could be a Ralph Schumann who's on top of everything and could work everything, but honestly, things are changing. We're getting we're going to have to do e-filing as of January 1st. I read in the news last week that a physician got her license pulled because she refused to take notes on a computer, and it does cause stress to always be having to keep up with the latest thing and knowing how to use this, and I think that maybe as attorneys get older who weren't used to doing it that way, it's a problem. Just more of a comment about something that causes anxiety.
And I have noticed that the ISBA has been offering a lot of tech classes lately, just even from how to use LinkedIn and Facebook and, from the e-filing. And so, definitely pay attention to kind of what their offerings are because they are trying to move in that direction as well.
Robin, another factor in stress is the fact that there are going to be additional limitations, including with e-filing, the size of the file that you can upload, and besides that, there are local rules. You could write a brief that comes out to be War and Peace, to realize that local rules say no more than 10 pages without court approval, or 50 pages if it's an appeals brief, and so your talent can far exceed the limitations of, especially if you're in litigation, what the courts are going to allow you to do. And then you add on the size of the files, the word count. I understand there's going to be a word count in, I believe those are at the appellate court level, is that they're actually, you have to have a certain word, or max out at a certain word count on your briefs.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that was harsh. Okay.
No. I'm sitting here thinking about somebody who likes to talk,
You guys are fun. And we're well aware of that, and that's some of the questions that we're asking in the intake and assessments is, tell us about your practice, tell us about, where your stressors are, where the hurdles are, and that type of thing. And then trying to match them up, again, someone with peer support. Typically, I would say, like for an older lawyer, if they're having alcohol issues, we would match them up with another older lawyer that's maybe in recovery. But in that situation, we would match up the elder lawyer with someone very young that maybe knows the technology better. I will say the new marketing outreach person we hired in our office is very young, and the stuff she knows how to do, I'm like, holy cow. So that would be another example of how to utilize peer support.
Let me just piggyback on Joel's comment about, the computer issues and, electronic familiarity. We have that rule on competence that's been amended to say you should be aware of the risks and benefits of various types of technology. And everybody's looking over their shoulder wondering if I do something wrong, how strict is going to be the retribution. I think that we should adopt a standard of reasonableness. We shouldn't ignore these requirements, but you don't have to be, a cybersecurity expert in order to do an adequate job. And if you're a member of ATG, anybody from ATG here, they have these audits. You can ask for an audit. And when they come out and they talk to you about what you're doing in your office, they can give you a lot of good suggestions on how to button down things, make sure that you're protecting your systems, protecting against some kind of a hack that can take place. There's a lot of resources out there. So let's talk about that. And let me just, I don't want to pat ourselves on the back, but that's one of the reasons that we're here, to talk about these things and share these ideas, have an opportunity for sharing information and a little conviviality out there, and they're ready for us whenever. So, Robin, thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having me.